Iowa. We're welcoming our new satellite office in Chicago, Illinois. Happy to say that we have people signed on today from the West Coast to the East Coast and a number of people in between. Very excited to have our presenter here, Steve Belknap, multimedia artist and an information architect. With 25 years, he's been helping nonprofits and for-profit organizations and families strengthen both their internal and external communications. He has a passion for helping families preserve their story and their legacy. And Steve and I became acquainted through another nonprofit, and the things he can do to help capture stories is really just amazing. And I know that Jane was just sharing with us that she found an old tape of her dad recording some family history and how impactful that is to hear someone's voice. Even though they might still be alive, you hear their voice and what they're saying to you comes to life again. So today, Steve is going to talk to us about how to seed and story seed with our donors. Steve.
Great. Thank you, Sue. And thanks to all of you. I appreciate being able to be here today. I know that all of you, because you're here today, know about the wonderful things that Charitable Giving Resource Center does. And I want to just start by thanking Sue and the Resource Center for this opportunity and talk to you today about story seeding. And I have this saying that true stories truly inspire, and that's what we want to talk about, the essence of what makes a story that is truly inspiring and that can impact people to participate, to be part of the story, and to join and support the story. A little overview. We're going to talk real quickly about some of the challenges that are out there today, and then talk about what makes stories true and inspirational, and then talk about some common elements of great stories, and then move in a little bit more of the practical ways that you can think about what are your story seeds. What are the seeds? What do you want to grow? What do you need to grow? What are those seeds? And then we'll take that and we'll put it into a classic 3-act story structure, and we'll see how stories grown from story seeds can create a compelling campaign that can help you to bring people down the road to engaging more and becoming a stronger part of your organization. And then we'll conclude from there. So just right off the bat, a quick definition of what story seeding is, as it means to me. Story seeding is the use of storytelling to plant seeds of awareness and empathy in the hearts and minds of those that listen. Inspire people to hear the full story. You know, you hear a story, and at the beginning, if it grabs your attention, you want to keep listening. That's important. And also to want to learn more. It's like, what is this? What is this that they're talking about? And then secondly, we're planting seeds that will encourage people to get involved and become part of the story, actually. And then thirdly, to support the ongoing telling of the story and expression of the story. So I thought I should start off by telling you a little bit of my story. As Sue said, for many years I've been in communications of various types and working with nonprofits. I've worked in the for-profit world as well, large corporations, small startups. I've worked in the private sector as well as for government agencies and so forth, doing a lot of information architecture and communications. And most recently, my most recent project is what I call StorySeed Studios. And with that, I'm focused primarily on helping families interview and capture the stories of their grandfathers or grandmothers or really anyone at any age, and help them to be able to share their life story. And I tell you, I never tire of hearing stories from anyone, because a true story, once again, truly inspires. There's something about a true story that that connects with who we are on the inside. It speaks to our hearts. And so these stories also that I've seen, whenever we package these stories up and we give them to the children or the grandchildren, almost every time there are tears that flow because they realize how valuable it is to have these stories, to have grandpa or grandma or mom or dad sharing their life and talking about why they chose each other, why they chose to take this path in life or that. You see the emotion and the passion and the values. And it plants seeds. You see the original seeds that were at the foundation of not only that individual's life, the one telling the story, but also if you're the child or the grandchild, you realize, wow, that's who I am. That's why. There's a little bit, I understand more now why I am, and I want to continue on that story and continue to live that legacy. So it's very meaningful to me to see and to be part of capturing that meaning and sharing it with others. So let's talk about a few of the challenges, all too common problems and statistics. I'm not going to go over a lot of these because I know you're all very informed about the challenges out there. First one's very simple. In today's world, it's very hard to keep people's attention. So many things going on, so much media, nonstop. People are getting barraged with everything. And as a result, engagement has a tendency to fall off. Retention rates are falling. I think 65% is the percentage of people that give a second time. So, and as engagement falls and retention falls, you feel like you're constantly trying to stop this erosion that's occurring. And another challenge that you have is multiple generations. I was working with a nonprofit here in Des Moines that is struggling with the aging of their membership base, and they know that they have to reach out and speak to the younger generation, so on, younger generations. And it is a challenge because we have differing audiences. They cover multiple generations and they require different styles. And so you might say, well, you know, the younger folks are on Facebook or they're on Twitter or Instagram and these kind of things. That is true, but you also need to understand that each generation has different reasons for participating. And with the mature generation, they have grown up with that sense of duty. And that's why they're involved in a nonprofit. Boomers have a desire to have an identity of being change makers. Gen X on down, solving problems. They want to be entrepreneurial in the way that how can we solve these problems in our communities. And then Gen Y, it's about creating community. And I think it's interesting that Gen Y really almost is looping back to the matures, that they connecting back to sense of duty. We need to be together as a community. So they're not all four completely different, but there are different communication styles and messages that should be tailored to each. How do you do that? It is very challenging. One way that you can do that is to use stories, because a great story speaks to all generations. And there are common elements of great stories that we'll look at in a moment that speak to all generations. So the opportunity is that you all have a great story to tell. You're all heroes already by deciding to invest your time and your effort to go out there and make a difference for good. And so you simply need to learn how to tell your story more effectively. And that's what StorySeeding is about. So true stories truly inspire. we're going to talk about some of the ways that true stories, why they're, what makes an inspirational story, what makes something truly want to cause people to follow. It's a story must be true and authentic. People have a natural instinct for what's authentic. And honestly, I see that, I think it's true of all people, but I see it in the younger generations that they will turn away quickly if they sense that something is not true and authentic. People will be drawn naturally to your story when it's true. There's something instinctual about all of us that's drawn to that. Now, the opposite can happen. If your stories that you're sharing are not true or authentic, or you're kind of, trying to bend the truth a little bit, or tell a story that you're saying this happened to me, but it didn't happen to you, you can end up kind of sounding like a salesman and turn people off. I was working with a large nonprofit once again years ago, and the main leader of the organization began sharing stories that were very powerful and passionate, but myself and some others began to realize that he was actually retelling stories that he had heard or read. And there was something that, that just did not strike right. And actually, some of us, talked to them about it, said, you really can't be doing this. But it did. It caused people to stop listening. They may have been in the room, but they were kind of stopped listening. And then even worse, people started exiting. And so it's very important that your stories be true and authentic. But once again, remember, you're all heroes already. And the people that you work with and the people that you support are heroes that have a story to tell. It's important, too, that you don't just have the facts. Don't just present the facts. I think it's very common when you need to put out a message in a newsletter or something like that. Well, what do we do? What are we going to say? To kind of just start listing the statistics of what your organization has achieved. That's very common. What I recommend is to not just state the facts, like in this case, an example, every day in the United States, 500,000 school children suffer from malnutrition. Very important fact. But wrap your facts in a compelling story, like, for example, put together a day of a life photo, presentation, or even a video that shows an actual family that you're helping that struggle to give their children the meals that they need, and then infuse those statistics in there, because it's the story that gets to the heart, and the heart naturally wants to give. But if it's just facts alone, they kind of get stuck up here in our heads, and we think, yeah, I've heard that before, and right, and isn't that terrible? And then it doesn't get down here. But if you take that and you infuse it into the story, then you have a much better chance of having impact. Stories are naturally relational. This is why stories work. True stories appeal to all generations. We talked about that. They're relational across generations and ages. It's a relational instinct to want to retell a good story. If you hear a good story or you hear about what an organization's doing, it's natural to want to say, you wouldn't believe what I saw today. There are people, I saw these people in Des Moines actually going up underneath the bridges, and they're going in and they're talking to homeless people, and they're trying to help them with food. And wow, I didn't know people lived there. And you want to tell the story. And so that relational aspect makes it easy for not only you as the leaders, but for the people that are not directly involved yet, to tell that story or share that story. It goes viral, as they say. So good stories contain seeds that, when they're planted, they multiply, right? And stories are also engaging. So we were talking about engagement before. You know, everyone loves a true story. They draw you in and they make you feel part of the action. You know, some of the best movies, they draw you in and make you feel part of the action. Another little comment on true and authentic. I don't know about you, but when I am watching something and I can sense that the acting isn't very good, I suddenly just kind of go out of, I suddenly go into this mode where I'm like, I know they're acting, I know that this is not real. But if a great story and the way it's told can draw you in, and once again, that's done through being authentic, then you can capture and engage people, and you are at the first step at engaging them and getting them to truly engage in your organization and be part of it. And these stories, they challenge you to continue the story in your own life and become part of that expression. So it engages you and makes you want to learn more and find out how you can be part of the story. And then lastly, you know, true stories inspire. They speak to the heart, and I believe the heart naturally wants to give. There's a natural desire in us to respond with empathy and to give. Supporters often say that they want to hear stories, the success stories of the charities they support. To know that the organization is authentic and engaging the cause they support. You know, they don't want to just hear numbers, but they want to really see it happening. And so short stories have the ability to show that true impact, which builds trust, inspires giving. So what are some of the common elements of great stories? You've probably all heard about the hero's journey. It's a very common, probably, I think actually the most common story structure that's in most of the epics and great stories of a hero who is confronted with some type of a need to go on a journey and discover ways that he or she can make a difference, and they go through tremendous struggles, and they go through all these challenges and learn, and they become transformed, and then they find that way to be able to make an impact and become that hero, and they save the day. Your organization is on a hero's journey. You are setting out, you've decided that you're going to set out and try to save the world. You're going to try to make an impact in a way that's truly going to help people. So you have, if you think about what you're doing, think about the different stories that could be told about the challenges that you face and the struggles that you face, and how people can be part of helping you on that journey. So hero's journey is another structure. We're going to bring these elements together in a little bit here into a practical way that like a campaign can be formed together. Common characters, the hero, of course. So think about, who are your heroes? Who are your heroes? Are they, as we said, it's definitely yourselves and your staff. But is it the participants that you recruit in order to empower them to go and actually take on the cause and so on? Every story has good heroes. And it's good to, when you think about those heroes, those are the people that you want to try to interview and find out what's in their heart, what motivates them. what is going on with their journey, what's happening in their struggle. And then also, every good story has a villain. So what is the villain that your organization is fighting? You know, is it malnutrition? Is it, homelessness? Is it, pain, suffering? Trying to, or helping people find meaning. All of these things are very important. So think of those things as characters in your story. All right? Those are some of the main elements that will become parts of the seeds that you can form these stories around. And then also, great stories have mentors and helpers, people that come along the way and help. And those people or individuals should be part of your story as well. And then great stories often have a 3-act type of a structure where over time, the tension and the anticipation in the story builds, and then there's a climax, and then there's a bit of a recovery period, and then Act 2, it kind of builds up again, and then people are allowed to breathe a little bit, and then it builds to the final big battle at the end, or that sort of thing. We're going to use this structure in a moment to talk about like a 3-part campaign, how StorySeeding can be used for that. So those are some common elements in stories. So let's talk about story seeds. So the seeds are the essence of your story that you're going to plant in your listeners to inspire them. So you want to tell a story. The question is, what should that story be? And what I'm offering is that you should really think about what are the central seeds that you want to plant in the story. And the real question is, so, what should you grow? What do you want to grow? What seeds do you want to plant? And each story should contain these seeds that will inspire people. This is the goal of the seeds, to listen to the story, to participate, and then ultimately to join the story and promote it to others, right? So, to me, the very most important story or seed is why. Why does your organization exist? Why do you do what you do? I mean, think about it in the most bare bones terms. Why do you exist? I think it's possible for organizations to be around, if they've been around a long time, to perhaps to have forgotten a little bit about why. Really, why is it that we exist today? What you can do is think back to when you first joined the organization, and why did you join? What was the passion that you had? Why did you join? Why did you decide to dive in and help? What are you fighting? What are you passionate about changing in the world? That question of why is very, very important. If your organization, has been around a long time, research the story of the original founders. Why did they found this organization to begin with? Research that story and share it with your team. Begin, perhaps share that as one of your stories that you share, maybe on an annual basis or so people understand the history of why this, this organization exists. And then I would also encourage you that this question of why begins with you as leaders, that it's so important that you understand and that you can express in your own heart and your own mind and be able to articulate why is it that do exist, that you then share that with your staff or those that are in your close circle of board or whoever it is that's your main kind of generals in this cause. And I would encourage you to at each meeting, go around and ask everyone to share just 2 minutes, a short story about that illustrates why they are part of it. Why are they participating in this? And so it'd be an example of, I talked with someone today, as I normally do. I picked up the phone. I talked with this person that's homeless, and we had a conversation, and she was very concerned about her children. And when I went through my normal procedures and I hung up the phone, it reminded me that I'm doing this for those children. Yes, the adults are important too, but it reminded me that I have a passion for those kids. That's why I'm doing it. And then the next person shares. And if you do that going around as a regular exercise when you come together, what you're doing is together you're planting seeds in each other. You're growing those seeds in yourself. You're reminding yourself the very essence of why you do what you do. And that helps to keep the organization from just getting in numbers mode and we need to do this and we got to get this done in this deadline and so on. All of that, of course, is important. But this will help you to live more the essence of your story, why. And that helps to build and grow the authenticity within your team. And then through that, you will also be discovering stories that, wow, that's a really good one. We should look at expanding on that. Can we go and interview that person? Because your team is looking out for stories. They know, I got to have my story for the staff meeting. Let me think, what was a really good one this week? Oh, yeah. And then before you know it, they're just constantly being aware of stories that, that are the heart and soul, the essence of the mission. Let me stop and just share a little story that happened to me yesterday morning. Back in November, it was somewhere around there, this December or something, our neighbors started to replace their roof and their siding all at the same time, right? So they're right next door. And the contractors came and they were pulling off the shingles and pulling off all the siding, and the house is completely, So I thought, this is going to be a long project, and it's kind of, wishing them the best and everything. And in my mind, uneducated construction mind, I'm thinking it'd be about a week, And it just started that it went on for weeks. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks. And the more once they started actually putting on the shingles and everything, they were using these air guns. And in the morning and noon and night and everything, it's pop, 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 pop. We felt like we were in a war zone. It was right outside of our house, immediately. And the frustration level was just getting higher and higher. And an interesting thing happened, because yesterday morning, one of the contractors showed up again at one of the at the house, and he had a black lab, a beautiful black lab dog sitting in the front yard, and I knew it didn't belong to the homeowner or the neighbor. This dog was not on a leash, and I looked at that dog and I said, what is up with that dog? And the contractor was in his trailer and he was working on some things, and the dog was just sitting there, and then he walked over and the dog kind of walked inside the house, but the dog was not on a leash and anything. And I was really intrigued by this, and I'm thinking, how does he do that? My dog would just be like running everywhere and smelling everybody, and something about that dog just caused me to go, wow. It's like my attitude about this contractor shifted like that, because I thought, it's amazing that this man has obviously invested a tremendous amount of love and time and attention into that dog to make it calm and to teach it to obey and make it want to stay and be part of what's going on, and not harass people, so much so that the country, he wasn't even looking at the dog, but the dog was just part of the thing, and he felt confident then to bring the dog to the job site. And the humanity in that, there was just something about it. I'm like, that's really neat. And it changed my view of these contractors, which frankly I've gotten quite frustrated with. And I don't know if you've heard, but the saying that as we get older, it's important to recognize change in the world. One of the ways that we keep our minds active is to recognize change. The opposite is that you become old and crotchety and don't want anything to change, and I don't like it anymore because it's not the way it used to be. But if you stay open to change, you stay open to this house changed color, or wow, there's something new, or there's new music, or what that will help your mind to stay supple and ability to grow. And so what I would add is that I realized what hit me is it's also important to remain aware to the good in the world as we live, because it's so easy once again to say, oh, there's all these bad things happening and these bad things happening, and I just can't believe the world anymore, and the way that those young people, and But if we remain aware, just like I did when I saw that dog, I said, that's a good thing. Wow, that's wonderful. It helps us to stay young. And I realized once again that I wanted to go over and talk to that guy and interview him and find out his story and talk to him about that dog and so on, and find out more about him. It became relational. I wanted to relate to this person rather than just being mad, about it. So that's just a little story that happened to me yesterday morning. So that's an example of the why that I'm involved in storytelling and so on, is to discover and help with that awareness of good things and meaningful things in the world. The next question, the next story seed, and understand as we move on here to why help, these story seeds are just examples for you. You need to think about what are your seeds, what are the essence of the seeds that you want to plant when you tell your stories. Now, I think why is one that everyone needs to do. That's the foundational. But why help? Why do I help, and how do I help? So next you're telling people how they can help your cause or why you help people. It's really an extension of what we were talking about before. And as I said before, in each team meeting, have team members share, why they help out. And this is where you can start, telling stories, showing ways that the charity helps people through various events and programs. And you can interview participants, ask them to express why they got involved, why do they help, and ask the people that are benefiting from your services to share their experience on what it was like to be helped. And then the next one, which is really a next level of intensity, it's more of a potency, is why join, why support, why give, And you can start to collect stories illustrating why supporters join the cause. Interview supporters capturing, the best statements of why they decided to join. So these are your, interviewing your most articulate supporters and donors. Getting at that question of why, because that's where you'll find the passion, where they say, they may tell a story. My mom, this happened to my mom, and I don't want to see it happen to anyone else. You get to that passion that can get to the heart of the people that you're trying to reach. So you weave those why statements into the stories that show the ways. So as you're showing the ways that you help people, you can have a background narrative of some of these statements of your supporters saying, I help because there are just too many kids going without food, and it's affecting their learning, for example. All right, so the story seeding, we're moving now into just kind of talking about the 3-act story seeding epic. So this is, I want to use an example of Star Wars and go through and talk about how the epic of Star Wars kind of fits into 3 acts. And you'll see some of the ways that individual stories and different messages are seeded throughout it that kind of brings us along. And then we're going to take this and use this type of structure to show you how you can take your story seeds and build them into stories that can create an epic that will take you to certain results that you want to have through different appeals and so forth. So Star Wars, my son's, once again, multi-generational story that's loved by, hero's journey. Luke Skywalker going through this, a farm kid, and then he's swept away and so on. My sons, who are now 23, 21, and 18, grew up as young boys watching all of the different Star Wars movies. Of course, I can tell them they're excited about the new one that's coming out. I am too. It's something that we share together. But I can tell them about going to River Hills Theater downtown in 1978 and not having any idea what it was. I had no idea what Star Wars, no concept. Sitting there, curtains open, and this giant ship comes across the top of my head, and I was just immediately engulfed and engaged in this. So it's an exciting story. And how does it start out? So at the beginning in Act 1, the main thing about Act 1 is that the why is revealed. They're talking about the why once again. Princess Leia is captured by Darth Vader. She somehow gets that message into R2-D2, who takes the message to Luke. And the tension builds, and the climax is when that message is revealed, and suddenly this holograph comes out. It says, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope," right? That's an appeal that centers on the why. And at this point, the story, the hearers don't really understand what this is all about. But it's at the essence of the heart. You're my only hope. We need to have hope. Hope for what? We don't, but it's hope. Yes, she's passionate. You're my only hope. And so that sets it up, and then suddenly it's like, what do we do? Where are we going? They get swept away on the Millennium Falcon, and Luke begins to learn to trust. Remember, he's got the lightsaber, and the little droid thing is flying around, and I guess we'd call it a drone now, right? Flying around and shooting lasers at him, and Obi-Wan is there and telling him, use the Force. He's appealing to him to say, use what's in you. Use what's in you to, don't just use your mind. Don't see with your eyes. He covers his eyes. And Luke begins to learn to trust. And then in Act 2, the tension builds because the Death Star shows its full power by destroying Princess Leia's planet. We're starting to see the threat of this evil villain and an entire empire of villains. And the climax is that Obi-Wan is struck down and killed, some would say sacrificed somehow. And when he does that, somehow he's able to speak into Luke's mind, and he tells him to run. And it's at that moment that Luke really commits to the fight. He saw with his own eyes Obi-Wan being struck down and killed, and that did something in him, and he was committed to this fight. Act 3, the full battle ensues. There's an appeal that goes out, join us. The full battle plans are revealed. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And this is how you can help. And Luke and the rebels attack. And then as they're attacking, if you recall, for those of you who are aficionados like me, Darth Vader is in his TIE fighter, and he's chasing Luke Skywalker in his X-Wing, and he almost has him and almost shoots him, and then some fire comes down from the side, and Darth Vader goes flying off into space, and it's because Han Solo, who was a doubter all along, joins the fight and helps Luke. He replied to the appeal to join us, and then Luke gets another appeal in his head from Obi-Wan, use the Force, Luke. And he centers on his heart, and he goes in there and turns off the computer that's controlling, the targeting computer, and trusts his feeling, and puts the shot in that destroys the Death Star, and the rebels are victorious. Okay? Classic hero's journey of going from not knowing much anything to being, learning and having to go through the struggles and seeing the dark, bad world, and then ultimately learning how to join in the fight and how to be victorious. So we want to take that now, and I want to show you a StorySeeding campaign structure that could follow that same type of 3-act. Imagine if you have your 4 quarters, and we know that 4th quarter is the best time to kind of build up to, because it seems like that's when people are most willing to year-end think about what they're really going to give or commit to. Sue can, of course, tell you a lot more about how that works. But this could be over a year or whatever makes sense for you. And so right off the bat, like at the beginning of the year, you start with why. Once again, you clearly state why. The beginning of the year is here. We're celebrating 2015. We're so happy to be part of the community, and this is why we exist. So you share these why we exist stories that are seeded with why. Why? Just the bare bones why we exist. We're here because of this. This is our history, and we're continuing on. This is our mission. And then it kind of culminates in a tension climax where you're putting out a why appeal. Now, this why appeal is really an appeal to the heart. At this point, the tension is lower because you're not really asking anyone to participate or give money, but you're just sharing stories that appeal to the heart with that why appeal. And you also celebrate your why. It's important to celebrate. This is why we are, this is what we do, and we're excited about it. And ultimately, of course, you want other people to become excited. So then in Act 2, kind of the theme is how to help. You can share some take-a-look stories and why I help stories. So these are the stories that have the seeds in it from your current participants talking about why I help, or take a look at what we do. showing here's our warehouse, and here's where we hand out food, or this is what, take people on a journey out to see what you do. And so it's a take a look appeal. At this point, you're just saying, please, take a look at this video, take a look at these pictures. And that will slowly build up to the climax of a appeal to help out. You've seen what we do. Come to this event and help us yourself, right? And at those events, share more stories and have those stories there, but also celebrate your impact, because you are making an impact and you are helping people out. You're getting more people involved by making that appeal to help out. So we've shared the why, and not a lot of tension. We're not asking for a lot here, just really sharing the heart and the why. Then you start to ramp up the tension a little bit more, asking people to help out. And for you, that may be direct, come and lend a hand, but it could be smaller financial appeals as well. This is where, if I were to work with you, we would talk about what seems to be kind of the right trajectory for this, based on your audience and so on. And then going into Act 3, we're really ramping up towards the kind of final battle where, perhaps it's your fall giving campaign, your fall campaign to get people to become enduring supporters, financial supporters. You bring out your take a look appeal, you're sharing those more. You're bringing the why appeal really out there in the forefront as well. And you're bringing in all these different types of stories, why we exist, why I help, take a look. Those are all the, you're really starting to saturate, and talking about all the events that you did over the year. And you're starting to then ramp it up even more by having those why I joined. Why I made a commitment to this organization is because these good things need to keep happening. And then that climaxes in a join us appeal. Join us. This is what we're going to do next year. This is what we did this year. Here's our full battle plans for next year, and we need your help. And of course, celebrate your victory. I also want to mention that, different stories, they pre-shadow what's going to happen. So as you're going through here, you can be talking about, we're going to have this fall campaign, or we're going to have this fall event, and you're kind of bringing that along in their understanding. But mainly, you're getting these seeds of why in people and inviting them slowly to become more and more involved. And then as you have your great success and you meet your goals and so on, you start again in the fall, at the beginning of the year, and you bring that back down again. It's a breather. Good stories breathe, right? You kind of let out and go back to why. Why? This is why we exist. Okay? So in conclusion, once again, story seeding is the use of storytelling to plant seeds of awareness and empathy in the hearts and minds of those that listen. So it's both awareness so they can see what you're doing and why you do it, but also has the power of bringing that empathy into people where they can truly understand the meaning and the purpose behind it that I believe will motivate people to give and to be part of the organization. For more information, this is some of my contact information on here, and Sue's as well. This is a recommended book that much of this presentation was inspired by. Don Portnoy goes into a lot more depth about some of the ways that you can do these things. And that concludes what I'd like to share, and I'm, of course, ready for any questions.
Thanks, Steve. A couple of things as people maybe put their questions online or people here devise their questions. I want to go back to one of the slides that you had, and it was about relationship and relational stories. And you talked about you want to retell a good story. So here at the office once a month, we do something called TED Talks. And so we bring lunch in, and one staff member hosts together 3 or 4 TED Talks, and we enjoy them together. And this week there was one about a woman who was an academic, and her whole topic was on the 2 words, not yet. Now, what does that mean? She talked about taking children's grades, and instead of giving them a failing grade, she would give them not yet. Jane, you've not yet accomplished math, but you know what? If we work together, we're going to get there. And she showed historically and over time what that did to the mindset of students, some as young as kindergarten and some in high school and beyond, and how powerful that not yet is. I have told that story every single day this week to every nonprofit I've talked to remember it's about those not yet. It's not what we didn't do, but it's what we have not yet done. So the power of what you tell your donors and your communities and the people you serve are all stories that are going to be retold if you do it well enough. The other thing that I wanted to tap into that Steve was talking about is sharing those stories at staff meetings. The single best place you can ask that why question is at the board table. When your board members get together monthly, quarterly, whatever, go around and strategically ask them, Mark, can you share with us why you're at this table and why you come back time and time again? And before you get around that table, all of a sudden, people have this energy in them again about being a part of your organization. We forget to tap into the history of why. And we do it really well as families wanting to know more about grandma and grandpa and great Aunt Hazel or whatever. But do we do a good enough job of that within our own organizations? And I would say the answer is no. Tim, you want to come up and get us to the questions? I'll open that. Are there any questions here in the room?
Yeah, you said
more of a statement. I'm on the board of directors of the YMCA Story Positive campaign. That's, we're going through our campaign right now. So it's reinforced what we talked about is the stories behind the reason and why you're involved. But one thing from my camp is more a statement of question posed to everybody is when you're going through this process is not to take it personal when somebody thinks you should just because it affects the next call.
That's a really good point. And for those of you who may not have heard that, we were talking about why it's important not to take a no personally. There just may not be the connector at that point in time. And it's that not yet. They may come around someday, but not yet. But a very astute colleague of mine one time reminded me that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, because we should be listening twice as much as we talk. And while we want to be able to tell the story, you want to know how your donor's story fits into your story. So always keep that in mind. Am I listening, and do I understand what their needs are and how my organization connects with those needs?
A few people lost audio. It's the only questions we have.
Oh, okay. Can you tell if we're still on?
It says right here you are connected to audio underneath access code.
All right. So it appears as though some of our people out there have lost audio at some point in time, but just as a reminder, this presentation today is being recorded. It'll be out on our YouTube, and you'll all get a link to that. You'll all get a link to the PowerPoint presentation as well, and so that audio does come through. Other questions this group has? Well, thanks to Steve for being here today and sharing the story seeds, and we hope to have him back for the 2.0 version of now what? So I hope you bring your lightsaber back for that one. That was fun to go through the Star Wars. You don't think about that. That's kind of the same way we need to tell our stories. So thank you again for coming and for being a part of this today.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody who joined us today, and we'll see you next month.